Hi everybody, thanks very much for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn. I run the services at MedCommsNetworking.com. So you'll find services, information resources, activities going on for the global MedComms community, by which I mean people who work in and around medical communications, medical education, medical publishing and so on, and indeed people who want to come and join MedComms. We do quite a lot of activities for people who are interested in a career in MedComms. You'll find lots of information at MedCommsNetworking.com. We're doing lots of these webinars at the moment. The recordings are all at NetworkPharma TV, where you'll find 350 plus recordings now. So there's lots of useful information there. If you are interested in what MedComms is all about, then first medcommsjob.com is the place to go. There's lots of information there to try and help you get your first job. Okay, so absolutely delighted today to be joined by the guys from AXON, and we're talking about hybrid healthcare communications. I think it's the first time hybrid has actually appeared in the title of a webinar. I haven't double checked that actually, but there's a lot of people talking about hybrid and the new ways of working and so on. I have some reservations about the use of the word hybrid, but I'm interested to see what AXON does to sort of explain how they position hybrid. And I think there's just a huge amount of discussion going on at the moment about how we do things best after the last crazy couple of years that we've had. How do we merge digital and face-to-face and so on and so forth. So I'm very keen to listen to this presentation and to hear some input from the audience. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Steph to kick us off. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Peter. So I'll just share my screen and get us started. Okay, so as Peter mentioned, today we're going to talk about this new hybrid era that we're entering. And before we kick off, just so for those of you on the call today that might not be aware of who we are. So my name's Stephanie Hill. I work for AXON as the marketing manager. And AXON is a global healthcare communications firm. As an agency, our business is to drive and provoke change in healthcare through the power of communication. So that really does require us to come up with new ways of thinking and doing every day as a team. So I hope that's a nice introduction for those of you that might not know us yet. And following today's discussion, if you'd like to raise any questions with us or get any further information about us as an agency, you can connect with us via the social handles you can see on the screen, and also our web address is at the bottom. So with that, we will go on to the sort of topic in hand for today. We're going to be talking about this new hybrid era that we're in. I think it's fair to say that combining physical and virtual elements is very natural as we recover from the pandemic. But really today, it's sort of, what does that mean for healthcare communications? You know, what lessons can we pull through from the last 18 months, 2 years into this hybrid era? And today we're going to really discuss some of the challenges and opportunities that our clients might be experiencing when considering a hybrid model or a hybrid approach. And in addition to that, myself and my colleagues on the line are going to share some of our top tips for really trying to achieve that perfect communications blend moving forward. So if you just to introduce a few of our panelists today, we're joined by some of my colleagues. So we've got Nat Turner on the line. Nat is a director at AXON and heads up our PR team. Nat works from the London office, but also from home. So very much taking that hybrid approach to working environments. And Nat's going to be sharing her perspective and her expertise on sort of more from a patient advocacy lens, but also discussing where hybrid might appear in our work area that's sort of maybe not in meetings and events. I'm also joined by Emma Lemons on the line. And Emma's a director at AXON as well and heads up our MedComms team. So Emma's going to be providing us with some client insights, some expertise around internal comms in this new hybrid era, and also, you know, discussing some information around scientific exchange with healthcare professionals in a virtual and hybrid setting. And then last but not least, we've got Andy Scott as well on the line today. Andy's actually joining us from Copenhagen. One of our offices is based out there. So Andy is an associate director at AXON and is also in our MedComms team. And Andy is very much our scientific exchange meeting and events expert. So we're really looking forward to hearing some of his sort of experience over the last 18 months on meetings and events and how we support our clients moving forward into this hybrid era. I think it's sort of important that, today we really did want to share our experience and expertise, but kind of going beyond that, we really wanted to share some client insights as well. It's really important that we discuss that so we can support clients better as they're navigating this hybrid era. So we have reached out to a fair few of our clients to understand what hybrid means for them, and also what some of the challenges and opportunities they might be thinking through when considering a possible hybrid model. So with that, I'm probably going to stop sharing my slides now and go on to kind of kicking us off with the sort of most important question, I think, is really, what do we mean by hybrid? It's a question that gets asked a lot at the moment, and in its simplest form, it's when you bring two very different things together. But in the sort of healthcare arena, in healthcare comms specifically, this seems to be sort of coming forward in the meetings and event space the most at the moment. It's a lot of discussion around the value and the importance of considering a hybrid meeting or a hybrid event. So when we're talking about hybrid meeting, really that's a physical meeting with a sort of seamless virtual element woven through, to really give both audiences the opportunity to engage, embrace the sort of face-to-face and the virtual elements, to sort of share knowledge across the globe through what we would say is a joint experience, but a very different one. So that's sort of like scene setting for us from AXON, but I think that leads nicely on to, what do some of our clients feel about hybrid? Do they understand it? Is it a term that's still really difficult to define? And is there some differences with how we're all interpreting it? So with that, I'd love to kick us off and actually ask Emma what some of the sort of standout themes that sort of came out when discussing that with clients and asking them what hybrid means to them.
Thanks, Steph. I think from the discussions that we had with some of our clients, I think the main themes that came through were flexibility and freedom of choice for target audiences for our clients, and really kind of assessing how to reach those target audiences and the best way for those audiences to receive information. Our clients, like us, have been quickly thrown into this virtual hybrid environment and have had to get up to speed, and it's been a steep learning curve for everybody. So it's really kind of assessing going forward and taking a holistic approach in terms of what the best way forward is when we're looking at virtual and hybrid meetings. And it doesn't always have to be that a meeting needs to be a hybrid meeting. It is really about assessing what's going to give you the best outcome, and more importantly, which format is going to allow you to reach the right people in the right way, and for that target audience to receive the information in the way that they want to.
Great, thanks, Emma. And when we're talking with clients, what do you feel is some of the biggest opportunities that can kind of come out of taking a hybrid approach, and how can clients really be leveraging this moving forward?
I think one of the main things that came through from speaking with our clients is being able to extend the reach of the communications that our clients are trying to get out. Being able to have a virtual audience, but also potentially having some people face-to-face and in person, has meant that clients are able to target a much bigger audience. I think pre-pandemic, sometimes physicians, doctors were unable to travel to congresses. That might have been because of budgetary situations with travel costs, and also sometimes from a compliance perspective, sometimes institutions didn't allow doctors, certain doctors and physicians to travel to certain meetings, and physicians like us were forced to kind of turn to digital channels to access their information. So I think one of the main opportunities has been that we can extend the reach of communications, and we can do that in different formats, virtually in a hybrid way.
Yeah, that's really interesting, being able to sort of pull both the benefits from physical face-to-face and virtual into this arena. So Nat, have you experienced any sort of similar opportunities when we kind of think more about the patient advocacy area?
Yes, we've seen a few. I'm sure everyone on the call today has seen how patient empowerment has really gone up another gear since we've been talking about patient centricity and keeping patients central to everything we do. more and more so we're seeing patients are now able to access and collaborate and co-create with our clients. It's made them having a seat at the table, if you like, a lot easier now that we've got sort of virtual technological ways to get them to join. You know, if they had a disease or illness that maybe restricted them in the past, they can now dial in from their kitchens. And we've seen that a lot more, and pharma are really interested to see how they can engage and have these patients involved. So it's almost given them an excuse to do this. So that's been a real positive.
Yeah, and I guess if, you know, hybrid considerations are the case moving forward, that will still allow, you know, that sort of virtual element being woven into physical meetings will still allow patients to have that voice and that presence. Really interesting. So Andy, have we, you know, what are the best kind of examples of hybrid meetings that we've seen so far? And, you know, when does it work really well to have a hybrid meeting rather than like going virtual fully or face to face?
I mean, I think first of all, I'd probably say that, the uptake of hybrid meetings with our clients and actually the medical organisations hasn't been huge yet. You know, I think they're still trying to work out exactly how this is going to work and how it will best work. I think, you know, from some of the feedback we got from our clients, you know, I think they're really keen to explore different options for the sort of hybrid meetings or hybrid communications. I think where they really see the value and what really came through was, you know, as Emma was saying, that, you know, there is this opportunity to kind of really extend the reach, with their communications. I think, you know, there's obviously challenges with hybrid meetings around how, you know, we set up the communications between sort of online, virtual, and in-person attendees, and that is still a kind of challenge. And I think that's something, you know, as the clients and medical organisations are going to have to work out how that can be addressed. And, you know, actually, and, you know, going back to what Emma was saying, you know, I think you know, we're sort of 2 years on. We've gone from, I think, the clients probably, you know, just really relieved to be able to deliver something virtually, you know, in the sort of first stages of the pandemic, to now being, you know, a lot more adventurous in how they kind of deliver, you know, online meetings and events. But actually, you know, what they found is, you know, some of the sort of meeting types, they're actually, you know, very happy just to stick to fully virtual. And you know, I think one of those examples from our feedback is things like advisory boards. You know, we've worked with a lot of clients who, you know, they've gone from having sort of two or 3 day advisory boards to having something fully virtual. They run over, you know, the course of 2-3 hour sessions, but then extend the kind of dialogue to having, you know, pre and post activities on different, you know, platforms to continue the discussion there. And they actually find that works very well for them. And, you know, of course, that saves on airfares and other aspects as well.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like there'll be certain cases where staying virtual and virtual being the sort of optimal approach for our clients, as you just mentioned in some of the examples. I think one of the themes that came out of the client insights, you know, speaking to some of our clients, was addressing virtual and digital fatigue, you know, digital burnout. You know, what are some of the tactics and tips that we've come up with, or the experiences we have, where we're kind of advising clients on how they can avoid that kind of burnout that some of participants might be experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all pretty sort of basic and practical things we can do. You know, I think, you know, this sort of virtual fatigue is in part brought on by, you know, having to stare into your screen and often, you know, concentrating on how you look. You know, I'm looking at the screen now and I'm just looking at my face, making sure my hair is all right. And I think doing that for hours on end every day can be really tiring. So I think you know, a few things, you know, really simple things that can help is build in breaks, you know, reduce on-screen stimulus, you know, so turn your video off so you don't have to look at your own face. But I think one of the really big things is actually, think about actually providing, this content or, on demand, because I think one of the biggest things is that people want to kind of consume this information at a time and place that's convenient to them, because having to juggle and multitask, while attending these meetings is another big driver for kind of this virtual fatigue.
Yeah, it's so true. And we've talked about, when virtual might be best, and some of the opportunities that hybrid present. But Emma, do you think there's going to be cases where we go back to fully face-to-face, and that is really the optimal environment for the kind of scientific exchange?
I do, and everybody that we spoke to really mentioned the lack of kind of deeper relationship building from that in-person interaction. And I myself have really enjoyed being able to go back into our office, for example, to meet with team members and just have that chit chat in the kitchen over a cup of tea. If you extrapolate that to a Congress scenario or an advisory board meeting, it's really an opportunity for our clients to kind of maintain existing relationships and kind of, really get in contact with those doctors again. It's an opportunity to have in-depth conversations following a symposium, for example, where there's some data that strikes some interest, or you want to pick the brains of one of the speakers a bit more. And I think, it's great that we've been able to pivot really quickly and have virtual meetings, but I don't think a screen really replaces those in-person informal interactions where you can really kind of deepen those relationships. So yeah, I think there is an appetite to go back to face-to-face, and hopefully 2022 we'll see that happen.
Yeah, I can certainly agree to that. I think we've all missed that human face-to-face interaction. Yeah. So we've kind of talked about when there might be circumstances where virtual is best and face-to-face, and then how we can maybe pull some of those best bits together to create a hybrid scenario with our clients. But what are some of the challenges that going hybrid present, and how do we work with our clients to overcome some of those apprehensions, because it's clearly a bigger task running something hybrid and having a hybrid approach. So Andy, what would you sort of say are some of the challenges that it presents, and how can we help our clients navigate this?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things, and one of the things we certainly heard from the feedback from our clients is, is making sure we understand and acknowledge that the experience for the virtual attendee and the face-to-face attendee isn't going to be the same. Acknowledging that, but also trying to set the meeting up so that you try to cater for both. I think we don't want to end up where we, have a bad experience for both types of attendees. So, trying to think about how we can make it a good experience for both separately, but also trying to see how we can, cater for, that interaction between the two, because I think that's the kind of difficult part as well. Having the connection and interactions between the online and face-to-face attendees. Sometimes it doesn't work. And we just have to kind of accept that it's going to be a different experience.
Yeah, I think that's so true. It's treating the audiences separately and making sure there's planning for that, but finding ways to support our clients with interaction points so that both audiences can share and engage. And Nat, have you experienced any challenges when considering hybrid? I know recently we spoke about some that you had experienced.
Yes, we've had one or two sort of interesting and different challenges. The settings, obviously from the comms part of the business that I'm representing and advocacy side, it's been lots of sort of workshops and brainstorm type meetings and trying to do those in a hybrid way. We found that having people who are actually together join separately on their own laptops helped stop that groupthink, or those who were virtual missing out on any discussions happening in the room. So they could still, the people in person were still together, but had their own screen in front of them. That helped. Obviously using, as to Andy's point, and setting expectations that the experience of those together versus online are going to be different, and being upfront with that. But we found introducing some simple tools like Miro, which is a virtual whiteboarding platform, if people aren't familiar with that, and that everyone could access regardless of where they were sat. That was really good. That really helped, and helped keep those engaged. But I think it goes back to one of the earlier points that Andy and Emma both made around, it's not going to be right for every situation and every client, and clients also are coming at this with different interpretation of what hybrid means to them too.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think the point about joining individually on laptops is a really good one, because you can then participate as a group as well as where you're joining from respectively. Emma, is there any other points from you about sort of challenges that we might be picking up now as we think about hybrid, and how we've been able to kind of advise our clients?
Yes, I think mainly from a budgetary perspective, actually, I talked previously about the hybrid approach being able to extend the reach for our clients, and clients being able to reach a much bigger audience. But with that comes a cost implication, because not only are you catering for the virtual audience, you're also catering for the in-person audience as well. And that might be via Congress presence. So maybe you have a virtual booth and you actually have a physical booth at a Congress, for example. There are other things, other examples. And one client we spoke to, actually, we had quite a good discussion, talked about a hybrid approach going forward, which is, well, his definition of this was, for those who would like to attend in person, hold the meeting fully face-to-face, but then following that meeting, have your digital resources, your high resolution resources that you can send out to the virtual audience. So you're still maintaining that contact with an extended audience, and extending the reach of your communications, but really focusing on those people that can and want to be there in person. And I think when we're advising our clients, we really try to kind of there is a cost implication, but of doing virtual and hybrid, but it is really about what's the best return on investment, and what's the best way to target their audiences, and to get their messages out there. So it's, I think it's a balance, but I think it will be a challenge going forward, and decision to be made in terms of best way to approach events and meetings.
Hybrid, that's definitely a new one. Perfect. So I think we've talked quite a lot naturally about meetings and events. It's kind of where hybrid is playing such an active role for our clients at the moment in healthcare comms. But Nat, I'd be really interested to sort of see if there's any challenges you've spotted sort of beyond the event space where hybrid is playing a role, and how we kind of can address some of them.
Oh yes, gosh, good question indeed. So it's not just about sort of events and meetings, is it? Gosh, I guess for us a big challenge is the amount of channels that there are now, if you like, or routes to reach people, whether that's direct access to HCPs, or patients, or media, whoever your target audience is. What we've found is that with this sort of multi-channel approach, all of our clients, regardless of their function, they're all trying to reach often the same people, but with different messages. There is a bit of bombarding going along, and so we're needing to support with some help on alignment and making sure, the right message. I mean, it's really old school and really quite commonsensical, but the right message to the right time to the right person has never been more important. I think, and Emma mentioned these from an internal perspective, that collaboration opportunities when you're making a cup of tea in the kitchen. Our clients are also missing those functional collaboration opportunities, from their side, and they're not quite sure what perhaps the team down the hall are doing anymore. So it's just keep a common sense hat on and don't bombard everybody.
Yeah, I think, like you say, there's so many different channels now, face-to-face, virtual, hybrid, all these different ways of reaching and connecting with people, having that consistent message and supporting clients with that, so they're not over bombarding or kind of diluting their message. So how are we, Nat, can you sort of talk us through maybe how we support clients with improving collaboration and, bringing that cohesiveness together?
Can speak from sort of our experience, particularly this past year, from an internal and external perspective. Starting with AXON ourselves, we have in our team some colleagues based in the US that worked with a handful of the people based in London. They were on the same client account. What this last 18 months has really showed us is that we are a really united team that collaborate. We've almost forgotten that they sit in another country. It doesn't matter because everybody's there. So collaboration internally has really, despite missing those kitchen moments, we've really stepped it up in other ways as well. We're much better at picking up the phone or picking up the Teams call or the Zoom call now. And similarly with our clients, it's been a lot easier now. They're not a faceless voice on the end of a bat phone, the old big conference bat phones you'd have in the middle of the room. We're finding collaboration and sharing that and sharing those moments with clients has become almost second nature now. We're not thinking about locations and geographies. This has really helped in lots of ways. And I think it's easy to focus on the opportunities that are lost, but actually there really are a lot more that we can really encourage.
Thanks, Nat. And I think if we just take a moment to sort of think about some of our hybrid experiences at AXON, we've talked a lot about meetings, events, and working with clients on kind of communication channels and navigating that. It'd be quite nice to sort of talk about where we've experienced a hybrid in our workplace. I mean, for me, it's one of the things that recently popped up was sort of onboarding new people, and you've got some in the room, and then you've got some of the people that they're meeting for the first time on the screen. And it's so important that the technology is right to make that feel natural. And I think that's probably something that we're all learning about. So any of you have any kind of insights you want to share on how some of the hybrid world is popping up in our day-to-day at AXON?
I'll just kick off with, I think, one of my favorites that, though I have to admit I haven't taken part in so much recently, was the icebreaker bots that we had that through from Teams, if those of you who aren't familiar with it, would randomly generate a coffee chat with a colleague in the organization. I think I was lucky that I got to be matched with people I didn't know so well and I didn't work. So we all seemed to really embrace that. So that was quite my first, I think, letting AI into my life and drive things. But it was just really simple and really good fun.
Yeah, and actually that can be hybrid because you can get connected with someone at work and you might be walking and they might be on the phone while you're having that sort of icebreaker coffee catch up. So yeah, definitely hybrid is playing its role. Emma, Andy, any kind of hybrid experiences you've identified at AXON or any fun experiences?
I think that you just touched on it, Steph, actually. Just, people can be doing various different things. They don't have to be sat in a room at a desk to have a meeting or to have a, constructive conversation. And I think when we'd all been in lockdown, stuck in our houses, it was quite nice when we were allowed to go out for a walk and join meetings that way and get some exercise at the same time. I think the simplicity of that and the ease with which we all did it, and I think we'll carry on doing that going forwards, even post this pandemic. I think that's a great thing, I think, to have come into our kind of working day.
Yeah, for sure. Andy, have you experienced any sort of, I know you're in a different location to the three of us, you're over the water in Copenhagen, but with the offices opening up, have you kind of experienced much of a hybrid experiences or challenges?
No, I mean, I just echo maybe what Nat was saying. I mean, I think for me being over, separate to the London office, I think, the last couple of years and the sort of advent of video calls and technology has actually kind of, I guess, improved collaboration for me. It's not just picking up the phone, it's having a face there as well, which is, for better or worse, improved collaboration for sure.
Perfect. So we're not far off sort of wrapping up our session today and kind of moving over to Q&A. So what I'd love is if we could kind of go to all of you and ask the question of like, what's your top tip when considering whether something should, whether it be a meeting or event should be hybrid? I'd be really interested to know your takeaway.
Shall I go?
Yes, please.
I think just really thinking about what you're trying to achieve from your activity. So are you looking to share information with as many people as possible, or is the need for a quick kind of low cost solution to gather feedback on something? Or is the ultimate objective to build and maintain deeper relationships? And I think, you know, once you've got very clear objectives from the start, I think that will naturally guide what the best format is going forward in terms of how to run your meeting event, or, you know, I think that will, you know, you'll naturally kind of come to a decision on the best format. So I think that would be, you know, have very clear objectives of what you want to achieve at the start.
So true. One size doesn't fit all. So it's
No.
a case of thinking about what the objectives are to kind of navigate that. And Nat, what would you say your top tip is if considering hybrid?
Yeah, I think I can build on Emma's suggestion, actually. Obviously, that's crucial, and the objectives. What I'm seeing people are doing more naturally now is collaborating and co-creating. And again, I'm speaking predominantly from the advocacy role that I do and working with organizations and clients. But it's really sort of level set things, and a lot more listening is happening, and this idea of collaborating to achieve the objectives, as Emma said, is becoming more natural. So for me, let's just really embrace this new zest for collaboration, rather than just saying we do. Let's actually do it.
Perfect. So hybrid collaboration is the way forward. Andy, any top tips from you?
Yeah, I mean, I think just going back on my earlier point, I think it's really just key just to you know, consider your both audiences, virtual and face-to-face, and make sure you cater for both. And with that in mind, also allow enough time for planning for this, because, you know, these types of events or communications do require probably a bit more thought and planning. And then I think finally, just to probably acknowledge that, you know, when we're talking about hybrid, you know, it's more of a continuum rather than a set format. You know, it's somewhere in between virtual and the face-to-face. And I think you just need to make sure you tailor that appropriately as to how you want each type of audience to interact and engage.
Perfect. So I think it sounds like, you know, hybrid approaches definitely provide flexibility, you know, freedom of choice, break down some of the barriers to participation that might have been there before. But, you know, there is complexities to hybrid, and, you know, we need to think about objectives. You know, what is it we're trying to achieve? Is hybrid best? Which parts of physical and virtual can we pull together to really optimize the outcome? You know, thinking about, is this hybrid meeting going to provide collaboration opportunities? You know, how can we facilitate that conversation, and making sure both groups, although are sharing an experience, it might be different, and how we can kind of keep that collaboration going. You know, in addition to that, it's sort of thinking about, it's not one size fits all. You have to sort of think about, you know, whether there's cost implications, travel, carbon, you know, sustainability perspectives, and, you know, how much preparation goes into these. So I think there's definitely some benefits, but clearly lots to navigate, lots to consider, and making sure that, you know, there's sufficient preparation and testing of the technology that you're going to use to really make sure that if you are weaving in a virtual element to your experiences, it's seamless, and that, you know, people are having a really, really good experience. So with that, it sounds like, Peter, we're not far off going over to Q&A, but, you know, I think virtual meetings are here to stay. Physical might not be far off, but in that interim, it sounds like hybrid could be a perfect blend if you get your planning right and you think about your audiences. I think we're ready for some questions.
Is that my cue?
Yeah, I mean,
okay, so
hopefully we kept the time for you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We've got a few minutes for some questions. I'm really keen to get some comment in from the audience and questions and so on. I find it fascinating listening to discussions about hybrid, because I can entirely understand arguments for face-to-face. I entirely understand arguments for virtual. It's the hybrid bit in the middle which I have a little bit of trouble with, because if it's about extending the reach, then virtual makes lots of sense. But, you know, do we need the hybrid bit sort of thing? Do we need the physical bit? Is it just down to the agendas of certain people in the mix, as it were, right? The example that comes through my head as I'm listening to people talk about this sort of thing, is a guy a few weeks ago who was absolutely fuming, and it's a slightly different but related. So his company, which isn't MedComms, has decided that their workforce will work in a hybrid way, because that's what we're all doing now. And what that means to this company is you will come in 2 days a week and you'll work from home 3 days a week. And the night I talked to this guy, he'd spent 2.5 hours in a car commuting into the office, because that was his day to go in the office, because he's now working hybrid. And all he'd done was sit on a desk on Zoom meetings or Teams meetings or whatever it was, with people who weren't there, sort of thing. And yes, it was nice to say hello to 1 or 2 people, but actually the 2.5 hour commute had actually just really, really hacked him off. And I think this is what, hybrid means very different things to different people. It's very individual. And I keep going back to this question, why hybrid? What is the value of hybrid as opposed to either face-to-face or virtual? Is it just some people would like to get together? That's fine. Then it becomes a question of economics and a question of, if I'm going to, and I think in my own terms, I mean, I run a variety of sorts of meetings. The first hybrid meeting I ran, I didn't realize I was running a hybrid meeting 5 years ago when I first discovered Zoom. And I had a workshop and I had a freelancers and a couple who couldn't join us. And I just turned the computer around, streamed Zoom, and it wasn't a great experience, but they were able to participate. But that quite quickly becomes why don't we all do that, Peter? And then we don't have to come to Oxford to the meeting. But the value of being in the meeting in Oxford is huge. But the economics became difficult, because the physical venue cost me a load of money, and turning the video around didn't cost me any money. And how do I mix that up? And I'm interested how the societies are coping and things like this with this. So anyway, look, I have a load of questions about the practicalities about how hybrid actually works in real life, and whether we're actually all talking about different things anyway, and whether it's just simply because a few people want to get together, which is fine, but how is it economically going to work? And this, I'm involved in 2 conferences this week. One's completely virtual, one's hybrid. The virtual one, the hybrid one, there are people gathering in various places, and I'm thinking, well, am I just paying the cost of them gathering and having their refreshments and their opportunity to chat, because I don't want to go to the hybrid meeting? On the other hand, I'm benefiting by not having to go anywhere. I can sit at my desktop. So the benefits are different for different people, but we throw the word hybrid around so easily. I just wonder what the practicalities are. And if you end up running 2 meetings to give everyone the maximum opportunity to engage, what does that do to the economics? Anyway, that's my rant. Let's get back to some of the questions that have come in around. Let's just pick up a couple of things that came in. You mentioned it a little bit in passing, but so a couple of people asked specific questions about how many of the clients are talking about carbon footprint, sustainability, and so on. How is that playing into hybrid? Is it playing into hybrid, or is it actually pushing just why would anyone go together? Why not just virtual? But just talk a little bit about the client's views on sort of sustainability and so on. Is anyone willing to pick that one up and run with that for a minute or two? Or I choose.
I mean, I would say that, yeah, I mean, sustainability has been on our client's agenda, before this all happened. I think, going virtual or going digital has kind of accelerated and has been a kind of a happy, a happy result, I suppose, of the pandemic. I think when talking about hybrid, obviously, then we're maybe going back slightly a step, but I suppose there's still going to be some sort of savings within there in terms of sustainability. Not everyone traveling. Maybe it's looking at a model of, having local people join face to face, then people further away, joining virtually. But definitely, it's been a real focus of our clients, not just in terms of meetings, but everything for them.
I mean, there's a reasonable argument just to say if we can cut down the travel, and then that's not a bad thing, is it? Sort of thing, as you say, regional hubs and so on makes some sense. Anybody else got a comment on that side of it? I come back to my question, for instance, if I'm running a society of X and I'm going to run a hybrid meeting, I need funding for that physical side of it, and like exhibition stands and things like that, which is traditionally a big source of income. If I'm a pharma company, how much are there tipping points where I go, well, actually, what's the point of funding the exhibition stand? Because there might be a few people gathering together, but the extended reach, the people I'm interested in are out there, sort of thing. How do you get a sense of how the economics are playing out, or do you get what I'm saying about this? Because I always come back to the economics, and I worry a bit about this, because there's no point, you know, it's like the pubs around here, you know, I'd love to go back to a pub, but the pub's closed because it's just pointless. So I'm not sure how the economics play out with some of this stuff. You need the physical presence to do some of this stuff.
In many ways, it's kind of out of our hands, out of the client's hands. It's, you know, I suppose it will depend where the big sort of medical societies and congresses go. You know, I think, you know, at the moment, it looks like we're still in a virtual world for most congresses, gradually moving towards, you know, some of them are kind of committing to face-to-face. A few of them are trying the sort of hybrid approach, but I think they're in the minority. You know, I think for the big sort of medical societies, you know, obviously face-to-face meetings is a big revenue stream for them. They are probably looking at their business model and seeing how they can make it work from a fully virtual or you know, hybrid model. You know, I probably don't know enough about what they're thinking to see how it will pan out, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in the coming months and years.
Practically speaking, sorry, if I can just follow that line of thought for a minute. Practically speaking, I'm just assuming that in your positions, there's a certain amount of you know, it's getting difficult because you don't know what's happening over the next few months, maybe into the next year. If medical societies or whatever are organising conferences, how much of contingency planning is going on? You know, you want to believe the society that says we're all getting together in Madrid next year, but you're not quite sure. So just give me a sense, and I speak out of complete just interest here. How much of the time are you spending just trying to figure out what your plan B and C and D are? Because things might change quite dramatically overnight, mightn't they? There's still quite a lot of uncertainty. Is that a fair point?
Maybe if I just so I can think of one client we're working with currently, and we are working towards a face-to-face Congress next year, middle of next year, and that's what we're doing. That's our plan. That it's going to be face to face. But of course, you know, nobody knows what's going to happen. So we do have to have in the back of our minds whether our clients are mentioning it to us or not. I think just from a position of responsibility in terms of counselling our clients and guiding our clients, there does have to be a contingency plan. Like what if we can't go face to face? What is plan B? What's the agenda going to be for this symposium? Or so in terms of how much time we're spending doing that, it's something that we build into the kind of counselling and project management that we do with our clients. But I would say we're primarily focused on it being face to face. We are optimistic, but you know, build in the contingency plans into what we're offering to our clients.
Presumably one of the advantages of doing a hybrid plan is that if the face-to-face collapses, then you've got your other side that just switches on for everybody if they want to join in, sort of thing. I suppose that's a sort of an obvious point, but that's actually maybe not such a silly thing to say, because hybrid does give you that option then, sort of thing. I thought somebody was trying to say something there. Sorry, did I cut across somebody? I apologise if I did. Again, questions coming in. One I was interested in over here. Have you got, I think you said to begin with, Andy, something about you haven't seen much in the way of actual hybrid stuff going on at the moment. But Len's asking, are you aware of any medical societies that have actually run a hybrid meeting yet? And therefore any experience of that? Do you know of any?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on you know, how you're talking about hybrid. Are we talking about you know, the fact that the Congress will be face to face, but they will stream everything? You know, I think as far as I'm aware, you know, I think that, you know, that's been happening for some societies pre-pandemic. I think because I watched one of I watched the talk I think Len did with you previously, and I know he mentioned that there were two meetings this year that were kind of fully hybrid. I can't exactly remember which ones he mentioned that they were, but I'm not fully aware of any congresses that are going hybrid.
Okay. Tom, I just want to see what Tom's saying about challenges observed with virtual conferences, time zones. Time zones may be an issue. I mean, it's an interesting unintended consequence or something of what we do. You know, it's like if you like, I mean, this sort of a simple event sort of thing. I've had people from the States or from Australia joining at midday, and that's great, but it's also really problematic. You know, if I go to a conference in Australia, which I've actually never done, I'd love to if anybody wants to invite me, but you know, I physically go there and I put behind me all the stuff that's going on at home, whereas I join in with now several meetings over in Australia, New Zealand and so on, but it's sort of in amongst the clutter of home life and everything else, and it's a strange time for me, and so there's unintended consequences in there, aren't there? It's very convenient in some ways, but you can't necessarily shut everything else away. So time zone problems, do you see that as opening up opportunities or closing down opportunities? Do you see what I mean?
I think maybe if I just jump in, because we did a couple of virtual advisory boards last year in the Asia Pac region. So we had Hong Kong, China, Singapore, Australia all dialing in. And I think it comes back to the point that we've raised kind of through our discussions, which is making sure you've got clear objectives, that the content that you've discussed with your clients is the right content that is going to target the right audiences. And then that audience will come, that audience will want to join in, irrespective of the clutter of home life that's going on. They will be engaged and they will want to participate. And we had a great couple of discussions with physicians from those countries, and the time zone really, you know, yes, it was late for some people and it was difficult, but it didn't really impact in terms of it being difficult for them to join a meeting, and for them to be engaged and participate and you know, give their views and insights. So yes, it's tricky, but I think it being virtual also means that it's slightly easier to have those types of discussions and meetings quickly with people in different countries and different time zones.
And of course, you can record and you can put it somewhere.
Absolutely,
like I'm going to with this NetworkPharma TV. It doesn't matter what time. And the whole asynchronous nature of meetings now is starting to open up in a way that it wasn't before, which is interesting. What's Neil asking here? What improvements would you like to see the current digital tool set to improve? So this is coming back to hybrid. Okay, so one of the points of hybrid is saying there's some people in the room, there's some people virtually. You know, it's not a different experience, it's about working together. What's Neil's asking about, what improvements or what suggestions have you got for digital tool sets to improve that level of collaboration between those two groups? Any comments on that? Andy, again, I'm going to go to you. I'm looking at you. I'm sorry, or anybody else. Andy, I'm looking to you.
I can certainly share from sort of like our offices set up. You know, we've got a really sophisticated team set up with good video, and we can all be sat around a table and the camera's picking up the speaker, zooming in, and then you've got other people on the screen. So we do quite a lot of our internal meetings as hybrid. And I really would say, having been on both sides, I feel like I'm part of the room, part of the conversation. I think it comes down to good mics, good audio, videos that can detect speaking, and having good sort of screens so that you can actually see all the virtual participants. So it doesn't feel like there's someone, you know, unavailable to view. So I've definitely seen that work really well in the office. Andy, from a meetings point of view, is there any technology that you've seen that like really makes hybrid easier?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we've noticed, I think, with our clients, you know, over the last 2 years running virtual meetings, is that they have they're keen to use more technology and have a higher quality of kind of stream. So, you know, actually using sort of studios and you know, dedicated AV teams to at least get the output of a really high quality. And I think that certainly helps from, you know, an audience perspective. But in terms of, you know, technology or you know, that's kind of helped, you know, with connecting the sort of online and face-to-face audience members. I'm not aware of something that's worked, you know, particularly well. You know, I know Nat's mentioned things like Miro and various other sort of whiteboards collaboration apps. And I think we'll continue to see that evolve in the future, and hopefully some new interesting platforms. One other thing that I kind of touched upon earlier was around this advisory boards and kind of continuing the conversation outside that. And one of the platforms we've been using recently has been Within3, which is kind of a closed discussion forum that we've been using, as I said, for ad boards to kind of continue the discussion there.
Okay, we ought to wrap up in a minute or two, but I mean, I think the point you've made several times, but I think is quite important to hang on to, is this idea that, and maybe the problem with talking about hybrid meetings or hybrid anything, is it's like, it's a sense that it's a one thing and you want to keep everybody happy. Whereas actually, let's be simplistic about it. You've got two audiences, let's call it two audiences. It's going to be a different experience. Yes, they both need to be happy, but they're not going to get the same thing. And is part of the problem that we talk about hybrid activity like it's a single sort of a thing? Should it be, I mean, Len's put a comment in here, and I think somebody else said something, is it the terminology that's a little bit of a problem? Because am I going to a meeting and I'm choosing whether to be there physically or virtually? Or am I trying to engage with a hybrid event, which is trying to be all things to all people? And maybe that's where I have a problem personally, because it can't be all things to all people. Does that make sense? Have you got a thought on that one? You're sort of nodding at me now.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
so sorry, Andy. Go on.
Oh no, no. I was about to say, I think I agree with that comment. I don't think, hybrid, as I was kind of saying, is more of a continuum. I think there's lots of different formats in between. I think at the simplest, it's having a face-to-face meeting and having a stream that people can go and watch. The meeting online. Then at the other end, you're talking about how can we have these meetings where we're actually having interaction between the different audience and the speakers. So I think hybrid kind of is an umbrella, but not necessarily particularly descriptive for what a meeting or is actually going to be.
Okay, Nat, yeah. Go on. What's your point?
No, I just absolutely agree. It's a phrase. It's just a word. It means different things to different people, and until you establish what it means to the client you're currently engaging with, then you've got to start there. It's like, for those been around a long time, it makes me think of years ago when people used to talk about market access, but nobody really knew what that meant. And it meant something different to each individual pharma company we work with. I think now we've come a long way. But this, again, it's a hybrid meeting. It needs defining. You need to define it with the people that you're supporting.
Okay. We are over time. I could sit here chatting about this for ages, and this is another one of these webinars where I'm going to say that I would really like to just go and hit the bar now and talk to people about what we're talking about, and I can't do that, and I'm very, very frustrated. But look, for the purpose, I think it's fascinating, and hopefully it's giving people things to think about. I know you guys are all very happy to hear from people if people want to follow up. LinkedIn's an easy way, but you've also given your contact details earlier on. For the purpose of the recording, I think I'm going to wrap it up now and say thank you. People watching now, we've still got a few minutes, we carry on going. But thank you so much for coming and talking, giving us the insights into what you're doing. And thank you everybody for joining us today. If you're watching this later, or if you're online today, if I can help with anything, I'm always happy to hear from anybody. Certainly come and look at MedComms.networking.com and the associated websites to find lots and lots of hopefully relevant content a bit like this, and there's more coming. So everybody, in these very strange and uncertain times, however, wherever you are and however you're working at the moment, stay safe and best of luck. But for today, I'm going to say goodbye. So everybody just give a little bit of wave and I'll stop the recording, but thank you very much. Cheers, bye.